I never expected things to turn out this way. It was supposed to be the happiest day for my sister Ashley. She had been planning her wedding for what seemed like forever. Everything was going to be perfect. The dress, the flowers, the cake, the venue. She had even enlisted me to help with some of the more technical parts. Her wedding was going to be the talk of the town, or so she thought. But then it happened. I was cut from the wedding. It started with the dress. Ashley had picked a beautiful gown for me to wear, something elegant and classy, but as I went to try it on, I could feel something was off. The dress didn't feel like me. I wasn't the kind of woman who wore expensive silk or lace. I was more at home in denim jeans, cowboy boots, and a simple shirt. I had grown up on a farm, surrounded by fields of crops and animals, working hard every day with my hands. But I had agreed to play along, to dress the part for her big day. But when I walked out of the fitting room, she looked at me with disdain. "You're just too country for this wedding," Ashley said, her voice tight with frustration. "It doesn't fit the theme. You don't belong here." I was stunned. Too country? What did that even mean? I'd always been proud of where I came from, proud of my roots. But to have my own sister, someone I loved dearly, look at me like that, like I was somehow less than, cut me to the core. "I don't think this is going to work," she continued, her voice dripping with disapproval. "Maybe you should just stay out of the way for the wedding. Let's not make this a bigger deal than it needs to be." I stood there, trying to process what she was saying, the sharp sting of her words cutting through me. She was asking me to leave. Not just the wedding, but her life, her special day, because I wasn't like her. Because I wasn't part of the world she was creating in her mind. The tears burned in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I had spent years supporting her, being there for her through every milestone, every little challenge. But now, it seemed like none of that mattered. I was the odd one out. I wasn't fancy enough for her high society dream wedding. As I walked out of the fitting room, my mind raced. Why was she doing this? Why was she turning her back on me, all because of who I was and where I came from? The thought of being excluded from her day, the day she was supposed to share with her closest family, tore at me. But I knew deep down, this wasn't just about the dress. It was about something deeper. She was ashamed of me. I walked out of the boutique not saying a word. I had been insulted, humiliated, and I wasn't sure I could come back from it. But as I sat in my car, a thought began to form in my mind. What if I could make her see? What if I could show her how wrong she was? I had always supported her, but maybe it was time for me to do something for myself. Something that would show her just how much she was taking me for granted. The drive home was a blur, my mind swirling with a mix of emotions. Hurt, anger, disbelief. I couldn't understand how my sister, of all people, could turn on me like that. I had always been there for her, supporting her every step of the way, yet in one moment she had torn our bond apart. I was her sister, her family, and yet I was being cast aside like I didn't matter. When I got home, I went straight to my room. I couldn't bear the thought of facing anyone, not after everything that had happened. My phone was buzzing with messages, but I ignored them. The only one that mattered was the text from Ashley, which read, "Can you please just let this go? You're making this more difficult than it needs to be." Let it go? How could I let it go? She had disrespected me in a way I never thought possible. It wasn't just the dress. It wasn't just the wedding. It was the fact that she had reduced me to nothing more than a label. Too country. How had I become someone who wasn't worthy of being a part of her world just because I wasn't like her? I sat down, trying to think things through. Should I go back and beg her for forgiveness? Should I apologize for being who I am? The thought of that made me sick to my stomach. I wasn't going to apologize for being myself. I wasn't going to apologize for my life, my roots, or the way I chose to live. If Ashley couldn't accept me for who I was, maybe it was time I stopped trying to fit into her perfect world. An idea began to take shape in my mind. What if I pulled back my financial support? I had invested a significant amount of money into the wedding, money I had saved for years, money I thought I was contributing to a day that was supposed to be special for both of us. But now everything felt tainted. She didn't care about me. She didn't care about my feelings or my place in her life. I picked up my phone and dialed the wedding planner. I wasn't going to let Ashley turn this day into something that didn't reflect who I was. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. "Hello?" the planner answered, her voice professional. "Hi, it's Sarah Miller. I need to discuss the wedding budget," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going to need to withdraw my contribution. I'm sorry, but I can't be a part of this anymore." There was a brief pause on the other end. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but the payments have already been made. It's going to be difficult to change things at this point." "I understand," I replied, my heart racing, "but it's something I have to do. Just make sure my name is removed from the wedding programs, and I don't want any part of this anymore. If she doesn't accept me for who I am, then she doesn't get my support." The planner hesitated, and I could hear the rustling of papers in the background. "Understood. I'll handle the changes." I hung up the phone, my hands trembling slightly. I had done it. I had taken control. The reality of what I had just done hit me, but at the same time, I felt a sense of empowerment. I wasn't going to let Ashley treat me like I didn't matter. This wasn't just about the wedding. It was about standing up for myself. It was about refusing to be the person she wanted me to be. As I sat there, the rush of adrenaline began to wear off, replaced by the quiet realization that I had changed the course of things. I wasn't just withdrawing my money, I was withdrawing my emotional investment in a family that had taken me for granted for too long. I took a deep breath and stood up, looking at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me, not in a bad way, but in a way that made me realize just how much I had grown. This wasn't just about a wedding. It wasn't about being rejected by Ashley. It was about taking my power back. The rest of the night felt like a blur. I tried to sleep but found myself wide awake, running through all the possible consequences of what I had done. Would Ashley even notice? Would she care? A part of me wondered if this was the end of our relationship, but another part of me realized that maybe it needed to end. Maybe this was the wake-up call I needed to understand that family isn't just about blood, it's about mutual respect. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts and calls, most of them from Ashley trying to reach me, asking why I'd withdrawn my support. Her words were angry at first, demanding answers, and then they turned into guilt. She started apologizing, claiming she didn't mean what she said, that I was overreacting. But I wasn't overreacting. I had to stand my ground. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about setting boundaries, about showing her that I wouldn't tolerate being treated like an afterthought. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took some time to think. What did I want out of all of this? Did I want to fix things? Did I want to salvage what was left of our relationship? Or was it time to let go? I sat down and wrote out everything I was feeling, every emotion, every thought. I needed to make sure I wasn't just acting out of spite. This wasn't about revenge. This was about respecting myself. I realized that I was tired of being the one to always give in, to always put others before myself. This time, I had to choose me. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I had made a choice. I had taken a stand. And whatever came from that, whether it was reconciliation or the end of our relationship, I knew that I had done the right thing for me. The next few days passed in a blur, filled with an unsettling mix of emotions. The initial rush of empowerment from withdrawing my investment had given way to a sense of unease. Had I done the right thing? I had acted on instinct, trying to protect myself from more pain. But now that the dust had settled, I found myself questioning if this was the only way to handle things. I couldn't stop thinking about Ashley's face when I'd walked out of the room that day, the hurt and confusion written all over her expression. I had grown up with her. We had shared so many memories, so many moments that were supposed to bind us together as sisters. But now it felt like I had made a decision that would break us forever. Still, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Ashley's actions had shown me that she saw me as an inconvenience, as something she could cast aside when it didn't fit her perfect image of what a wedding or a sister should be. She had rejected me in a way that was hard to ignore, and no amount of apologizing could make up for that. But as I sat there, replaying everything in my mind, I realized one crucial thing. I had taken control of my life for the first time in a long time. I had always been the one who put family first, always sacrificed for others without a second thought, but in that moment, I had put myself first. I had chosen my own dignity over the approval of someone who clearly didn't care about me as much as I had cared about her. As the days passed, Ashley kept trying to reach me, texts, calls, even emails. At first I ignored them, uncertain about how to respond. I wasn't ready to face her yet, not with the hurt I was still carrying from her rejection. But eventually I gave in. I couldn't keep running from this. I picked up my phone, scrolling through the endless messages. Each one started with an apology that felt shallow at first. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "You're still my sister." But as I read on, the messages began to shift, becoming more defensive, more demanding. "You're making a big mistake," one read. "You're overreacting. This is your chance to be part of something beautiful. Don't let this ruin our relationship." I felt my chest tighten. She still didn't get it. She was still seeing this as a transaction, as something I had done out of spite, rather than a deep, painful need to reclaim my self-worth. She wasn't understanding why I'd pulled away. She wasn't seeing that it wasn't just about a wedding or the dress. It was about how she had treated me for years, as someone less than, someone who didn't belong in her perfect, curated world. I decided it was time to respond, but I wasn't going to do it the way she expected. I wasn't going to back down or apologize for taking control. I sat down at my desk and opened a new message. I wanted to be clear, firm, and kind, something I hadn't always been with Ashley. For the first time, I was speaking not just as her sister, but as a woman who knew her worth. "Ashley, I've thought a lot about everything, and I want you to understand that my decision wasn't made in haste. You've treated me like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't fit into your vision of the perfect life. For years, I've bent over backward trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me, but I'm done doing that. I deserve to be respected for who I am, not who you want me to be." I paused, my fingers hovering over the keys. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. Tired of the games, tired of the distance, tired of being ignored. I took a deep breath and continued. "I've spent my whole life making space for you, but now I need to make space for myself. I won't apologize for being who I am, and I won't continue supporting something that doesn't respect me. If this wedding is more important than our relationship, then I have to step back. But know that I love you, no matter what." I hit send and immediately felt a mix of relief and fear. Had I made the right choice? Would she understand? Would she finally see what I had been trying to say all along? The hours that followed were tense. I couldn't help but check my phone constantly, waiting for her response. But when it came, it wasn't what I expected. "Sarah, I'm sorry," the message began. "I didn't see it like that. I was caught up in everything, and I let that cloud my judgment. I was wrong to treat you that way. I don't want to lose you." The words seemed to hang in the air, their weight sinking into my chest. For the first time, Ashley had admitted that she was wrong. She had finally acknowledged the hurt she had caused. It wasn't an immediate fix, and I knew that rebuilding our relationship would take time, but I felt something shift in me. I looked up from my phone and took a deep breath. Maybe this wasn't the end of our relationship. Maybe it was the beginning of something new, something where we could both be our true selves without fear of judgment or rejection. The next day I called her. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. There was no judgment, no pretending to be someone we weren't. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was real. And in that realness, we both found something we hadn't expected, a way to move forward. As the days passed, I began to realize something important. Healing wasn't about forgetting the hurt or pretending it never happened. It was about acknowledging the pain, learning from it, and finding a way to move forward without letting it define me or my relationships. Ashley and I were starting over, not from scratch, but from a place of honesty. Our phone calls became longer, more frequent. We started sharing things we had kept hidden from each other, things that had caused so much distance between us in the first place. I learned that Ashley, too, had been struggling with the pressures of perfection, expectations from our parents, from society, and from herself. She had been trying so hard to create a perfect image that she had pushed me away, unknowingly rejecting the very person who had been there for her since day one. "I didn't know how much I was hurting you until now," she admitted during one of our calls. "I wanted everything to be perfect, and I thought that meant controlling everything. But I realize now that I was controlling you too, without even knowing it. And I too had to face my own role in this. I had allowed her to treat me like an outsider in my own family. I had spent so much time trying to fit into her world, trying to be who she wanted me to be, that I had lost sight of who I was. I had allowed her rejection to define me, to make me feel like I was too much, too loud, too different. But I was beginning to understand that I didn't need her approval to be enough. The first time we saw each other after that conversation, it was awkward. There was no denying that. We had a lot to work through. But as we sat together, having coffee at our favorite cafe, something felt different. For the first time, there was a sense of mutual respect, not just for our differences, but for the bond we shared as sisters. We had both been wrong, but we were both willing to try again. "I don't need your approval either," I told her that day, the words coming out with surprising clarity. "I'm not perfect, but I'm proud of who I am. And I want you to be proud of me too. Not for what I do, but for who I am." Ashley nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "I am proud of you. I just didn't know how to show it. But I want to do better. For both of us." That moment felt like a turning point, not just in our relationship, but in my life as a whole. I had spent so much time seeking validation from others, thinking that was the key to happiness, but I was beginning to understand that the real power lay in finding peace with myself, in accepting myself fully and unapologetically. As time went on, things between us slowly started to heal. There were still bumps along the way, of course. Rebuilding trust isn't easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but with each conversation, each step forward, we were getting closer. And more than that, I was beginning to see how much I had grown in the process. I had learned to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, and to choose my own path. One day, I woke up and realized that I didn't need the wedding to be part of my life anymore. I had built something for myself, something stronger than any label could define. I was no longer the sister who had been too country. I was a woman who had gone through betrayal, rejection, and heartache, and come out the other side stronger for it. Ashley and I sat down for one final conversation about the wedding, what had happened, and what we both needed moving forward. We didn't try to erase the past, but we agreed to accept it and move on. The wedding had come and gone, and in the end, it wasn't what defined our relationship. What defined us was the willingness to grow, to forgive, and to love each other despite everything. And as I looked back on everything that had happened, I realized that in the end, this experience had taught me something invaluable. Sometimes we have to lose something in order to find ourselves. I had lost a piece of my sister, but in return, I had gained a deeper understanding of who I was and what I was capable of. As I stood at the edge of my new life, I knew one thing for sure. No one else could define my worth but me. I had taken control of my own story, and that was something no one could ever take away from me.